to live.
Good morning. This is Chris Vinh from Artistic Artifacts in Alexandria, Virginia. This is our Saturday morning Facebook Live, and today we're going to talk about some gift wrapping ideas using fabric. You know, we had a whole summer series called Summer Sewing or Holiday Piece, but if you're like me, you're doing some of your winter sewing just in time for the holidays. So I'm going to give you some fun projects. All of the ones you see here are ones I've made this week, pretty quick. All of them are fat quarter friendly, or get a half yard and you can get 2 bags in alternate colors. So there's lots of ideas. We will post the patterns and the videos that I've used, so you have the links, and I'll talk about what the pattern name is. A couple of them are free, a couple of them I bought directly from the designer, and a YouTube video. So these aren't my designs, they're my interpretation. I've taken them and interpreted them. So the first bag is the Origami Gift Bag, and that is actually a GE design free pattern that she's had maybe 2 weeks ago, and let me tell you, it's addictive. It is very addictive. It's a great use of your fabric. They're fun. I've got a couple of samples here. This one was using some Baby It's Cold Outside fabric, and then I used a little velvet rickrack, and it's the perfect size to put a Bernina feet that are on sale for 25% off. And the fabrics are on sale as well at Holiday Fabrics 21. So if you don't have scraps of your own, we've got lots to give to inspire you. This one is the same pattern. Each one looks a little bit different, and I'll show you why. But this one is also a good size for some notions. I've got some perfect scissors, a little bit of some tulip needles. Perfect way to fill it, but it's also a nice size for a gift certificate or a little something. This is a cottons from India, and then I embellished it with some variegated eleganza thread from Wonderfil. And my ties in this one are just some leftover yarn from another project. I think this one would also be really cool in the sari silk fat quarter bundles. This one's a little bit bigger, and this one was actually fabric left over from another project that I'll show you in a little bit. But this is Holly Jolly fabric and a little Dear Stella fabric. Again, I've got lots of yarn, so. But it's a fun bag to make. The pattern will give you a couple different sizes. But what I have done on this is I've cut 2 squares. There's different size options in the free pattern. I've pressed the center, and the first thing you do, you fold it in half. The pattern will tell you you can use a dinner plate, which is what I did for my first ones, or you can use the round up tool. You put the round up tool, line it up on your corners of your fabric. You trim it off. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the 2 fabrics. They were right side together. You would sew them together. You're going to leave a little bit of a gap so that you can turn it right side out. And then once you've got it right side out, pretend that this is sewn. I'm going to do a little bit of a top stitching around the edging. And then you take your 2 ends. I'm going to take that press seam and put that on the 12. And then you take your 2 ends and you fold them in as much or as little as you want. So I want to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, But if I wanted a little bit bigger bag, I could take it out a little bit further, or vice versa, I could take it in. So that's the first step. So then, this is where I've already taken it in. I've pinned the edge so it's straight. And then Gudrun will tell you, you take a 1-inch line above and a 1-inch line below the center point, and you sew that seam. So what you're doing is sewing that closed. You're going to flip this up, making sure they're even. You take some Wonder Clips, you line up that sewing line, and you line up this piece up here. Okay. You sew, she says about an eighth of an inch seam. It doesn't have to be very much. It's just right on the edge. What you're doing is sealing those two edges. And so this is one where I sealed the edges, and before you flip it, you take this line from the corner of this line and the corner of this line, and you take another seam. And that's all you're doing. I didn't even mark it. I just kind of eyeballed it on my sewing machine, sewed there, sewed there. And then when you flip it, what that does is it allows it to stand up.
Isn't that like a box pleat?
It's a box pleat, yeah. Just kind of box out your corners there. There's the bag. So the other thing you can do is, now that I have the bag, I can decide how much or how tall I want to make the bag. So if I want a little bit taller bag, I can put it up there. Or I can make it, if it's a shorter bag, I can make it down there. Again, I take my clips, flip it on the other side, and take the same amount. And then what I do is I sew a casing. So all I'm doing is sewing a straight line at maybe about 3/4 of an inch, and that'll give me a casing to put my ribbon or trim or whatever I have in it. That's it. You have a bag. I told you it was simple. This one, as my colleagues noted yesterday, is I sewed my 1/8 inch seam on the outside, but it was fine. But it was my first one. But Gudrun has a 10-minute video on YouTube on making these. Watch the video, and I can honestly say these were it took me 15 minutes to make them. I whipped out 4 of them in an hour. I cut them all. I did all the trimming of the circle. I sewed the pieces. And so I had an assembly line going. My husband thought I was absolutely crazy upstairs, but you know, he knows that I am, so that's that. Any questions about that pattern?
Nope, everybody's very interested, watching, lots of hearts.
Okay. Alrighty, the next pattern is a Casey Stevens. For those of you who've watched a couple of the videos that I've done for Artistic Artifacts, I like the Casey Stevens modern Japanese rice pouch pattern. This was the first one I made back probably in the spring or the summer. I used Japanese fabrics from the shop. I did a lot of boro stitching. Most of what she does is hand stitched, hand embellished. This is a perfect size. I've got a knitting project inside, so it's a great project bag. It actually hangs on a I have a wooden chair next to my work on the couch, and it hangs in there, and I'm ready to stitch. This one was my second one, and I actually, rather than putting a cording through it, again, I stitched, this is a Marcia Durst fabric. I stitched with some Wonderful thread, the colors that are already in the fabric, and this is a nice storage bin. So
Look at all those threads.
You can see that I have all my pretty threads in it. This sits in my sewing room. But it also, if I wanted to, I could, if I was taking this someplace, I could easily put cording in and do it. So those were early pieces. So it doesn't have to be holiday fabric, but it's a good way to do it.
But you did one in holiday fabric.
I did one in holiday fabric. This one was using the Holly Jolly panel, which we have the panels and we have the complementary fabric. So when I told you I used some leftover fabrics, that's the fabric I used. And the panel, as with all our holiday fabrics, are on sale, but this one was a fun one. This is another one I actually wasn't racing for at the 15-minute mark. I did some hand embellishments, so you'll see a couple little fringe knots and just hand stitching. Use just a little tape. This would be a good wine bottle size. Actually, this would make a nice gift bag with some yarn or some sari silk in it. And one trick I learned with that, her pattern is very, it's very good. It's half yard piece because the width around it is like 35 inches. So this isn't as fat quarter friendly as these other ones were. But one of the techniques, and she gives a very good idea on the pattern, but I'll show you one thing I've learned making them is, so this is the lining for one I'm making now. And ask me how I know is remember when you're making the lining that you need to leave a gap so you can turn it inside out. I have more than once sewed the whole thing. Both the lining and the outside are done the same way. And what you do is you have a square. And, the size, they've cut the size. And what she recommends, and you use your marking pen, is you take a 1/2 inch. At the 1/2 inch point, you mark your corners. And I'm just using a disappearing ink pen, any type of marker, fine line disappearing ink pen works well. You take that first corner and you line that up with your seam at the 1/2 inch mark, and you sew to the next corner. And then what you do under you leave your needle down so that you can, but you bring up your foot. And this is the only part that's a little bit complicated, and each one I've gotten a little bit better, is that then you manipulate your fabric around and you sew to the next one. And then you just do that all the way around, and that'll give you the square bottom. The one piece that I have learned in doing that is I actually have started to trim this piece. I've trimmed the corner a little bit. So I've taken 2 little, maybe 1/4 inch snips, and that helps me maneuver around that corner. The other thing I've used is a shish kebab skewer, because it's got a nice point, and I'll actually put that underneath. You could use the purple thingy, would be the same thing, is to put it underneath there to hold that bottom piece so that it doesn't get bunched up. But other than that, you're making an inside and outside. You put your tabs on your outside and you sew your pieces together, you flip them around. So basically the same principle. She's got lots of good ideas on her pattern and on her Instagram page. It's KZ Stevens, of how she embellishes them. She really is into doing a lot of slow stitching, borrow work. So she's a fun person to follow. So that's that bag. Any questions on that one? All right, the next one is also a pattern by Casey Stevens. And these two are props. But these two are that one. So this one would make a nice little gift. to give them. And then after the season, oops, after the season you have a little project bag. So this one I made a little bit different. That one is one. And this is another. So this one shows she does have tabs in the pattern, so she actually tells you how to make, what size tabs to use. And so when you use the tabs, it's gonna, but it has a round bottom, so instead of the square bottom, this one is a round bottom. But you know, similar concept. Again, this was last year's fabric, but a good way to use some leftover fabrics. Her pattern for this actually calls for hand stitching, that it could be hand stitched together. So if you don't have a sewing machine and you're doing a lot of hand stitching, it's a fun way to make a little bag. But I use the sewing machine, and instead of putting tabs on this one, I just made a casing and only put my thread on one.
Is that like decorative cord that goes inside of?
It's a twill cord.
Okay.
It's a twill cord, yeah. I bought it at that fabric store I don't mention. And this is some sari ribbon that I've had for a while, a little decorative one. I've got lots of stash. The pattern comes with a circle that you just print out. And you can see I've cut it many times, so it's not all the same. But it does have a marking at the quarter marks, and it has a seam line. So you cut out your circle of whatever fabric you're using. And the only thing I wanted to show on this one, because it's basically exactly the same, is you're going to sew either your outer edge or your inner. Your inner one, you make sure that you leave an opening so that you can turn it. But then what you do is you take, she tells you in the pattern how to mark. So you mark it this way in half, and then you turn it again and mark it in half again. And this is up at the top, but I've done this down at the bottom. I just pressed it. I didn't, but you could mark it with the disappearing ink. And then you match up those points with the points that you've marked from the pattern. So this one, again, I just kind of clipped it rather than marking it, but you could do either one. This is, you know, I've made several of these, so I kind of learned my own little techniques of simplifying it. And then all you're doing is you want to pin it very good, because you're going to be sewing in a circle, but it sews out nicely, and you really don't see, you know, it's not like it's a seam that if there's a little bit of gathering. But by pinning it like this, you can easily get it under your sewing, your
Foot.
Your foot. I used 1D, my Bernina 1D, and just sewed around and slowly sewed it around so that I was at my half-inch mark. And that's really the only thing that is. And first I was worried about, do I need to press it? How do I press a circle? It doesn't make any difference. It's for what you're using it for. You're not looking for perfection. You're just looking for something fun to do and use your fabric and play. Okay?
So the wrapping becomes part of the gift.
And it's sustainable. So it's not like you're wrapping a whole lot of paper that you're throwing out the next day into the garbage. It is a gift, but it also is one that the person who gets it this year could use it as a bag and give it to someone else next year. So it could become a family tradition. Is this not a used fabric could be passed down in my family for quite some time now and be a family joke. Some of my gifts are family jokes. All right. And then the last one I have was a very short video that I saw on Crafty Home. Again, how to use some leftover fabric. So all three of these gifts, or books, or little boxes from my studio, were wrapped with a 18-inch square of fabric. So it was a fun way And actually, we could probably use one of these as well. So this one I actually even tied because it was 20 inches across. I cut a little bit off, had some leftover. A cat from my shelf, but I could take a gift like this. I mean, this is no rocket science, but it's using fabric. I've done it before with tissue paper, but now what you're really doing is you're using some fabric. The person can use that fabric then when themselves, or they can give it back to you, and you can reuse it again yourself. But
We had a husband wrap the sewing machine that he was giving his wife for Christmas in fabric.
oh, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of that. I could have done that. So that's that one. This one is a smaller one, but let's see what size I used on this. So this one's actually a 14 inches of fabric. So it really kind of depends on what you have in your stash. Or, you know, pick up a whole fat quarter bundle. And so this one, they're really just, what you're doing is wrapping it just like you would be wrapping with paper. I think the fabric is actually a little bit more forgiving than paper can be sometimes. Because it's more pliable than paper. I could never bend the paper up like this. And then your corners become your bow. So you don't even need ribbon to do it.
Fun.
And the nice part about I've used batiks for these, is because I've used batiks, they don't really fray when they're cut, so they worked really well. The video that I watched, she actually did like just a little bit of, one, she used pinking shears to trim the edges. You could use your serger. You could, you know, just fold it under a little bit.
Sue Carroll says, I've been wrapping Christmas presents in fabric for 15 years, and the fabric now circulates among the family every year.
And see, and if it was paper, the paper would be gone. I mean, we've tried to save paper, and then you realize how wrinkled it is or whatever else. And this one is actually fun. Taken off my bookshelf. Steal like an artist, so yes, you can, and give credit where credit's due. This one is called, and I had to write it down, a Furrow shiki technique. It's again a Japanese technique, but where you take your first cut, you take your second cut. How easy is this? And you're not even using Scotch tape.
Oh, you tied it double. Okay, hold on. Let me show him what.
Okay.
Oh, neat.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
And that's a whole lot easier than wrestling with
Paper.
the paper and the Scotch tape. All right. So those are my ideas for the day. They were fun. I had a lot of fun, and I went through some stash, and I bought some fabric. So, you know, you work in a fabric store, of course you're going to buy fabric. So this was Starlit Hollow, and this is this fun babushka fabric from Scandi. I think this was 2020. We still have some of this left, but it's a really fun little fabric. I told you that this was Baby It's Cold Outside.
And that coordinates with the panel. Oh, no, it doesn't.
No,
Sorry.
The Holly Jolly.
Holly Jolly.
Holly Jolly coordinates with the panel, and a lot of the Dear Stella fabrics go with any of them. Oh, I forgot one that, this one was some of the Winter Magic batiks. So batiks are always great. And then depending, I mean, again, it's one that you can use all year round. The colors are right for Christmas, but it's also used round. This one was last year's fabrics.
So use what you have, but also, so there's two ways about this. This is Judy. So you can use what you have to give yourself more room to buy new fabric, or you can just skip it and buy new fabric. Because our holiday fabric is 25% off right now.
And I, of course, you know, I'm wandering around the store this morning. This, it's called First Frost by Amanda Murphy. It's 22 pieces of fat quarters. Just look how many bags you can make with this one. And this one's 25% off. I used Wonder Clips, which we have. Some of these fabrics are from the Magical Winter collection. And the Magical Winter collection is the same that I used for my Bargello quilt, which I think I showed in the summertime in one of the videos. But this was using actually
The jelly roll, right?
the jelly roll, yeah. So it was strip piecing that. And then I had some extra fabric, but I think I gave it all to Judy. Of the classic foliage, and then this was the stripology one from the mixology. But my thought on buying Christmas fabric this late in the season is I'm stocking up for next year. At a sale price, it's a great way to stock up.
And we will have Christmas in July again, or holiday in July to cover all the bases.
And speaking of sales, we've got a really special sale coming on tomorrow. It's called Supply Sale Sunday. If you're on our email list, you should have gotten an email yesterday afternoon. We'll have it posted on Facebook a little bit later this morning. And I think it was posted on Instagram and Facebook yesterday. It's through our Comment Sold website. And between 10 and 4 tomorrow, certain items will be marked down only on our Comment Sold website at 20% off. If you belong to our Comment Sold website already, you can go in, you can start looking at the items. They are not marked down yet. They will only be marked down from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow. But to give you an idea of some of the things we have one category is called
Scissors?
No.
Oh, sorry.
One category is called stabilizers. So we have some OESD stabilizers. We have a number of, we have Spotlight and another wonderful thread. So there's some sewing and embroidery options for there. Another one is sewing, sari silk, and something else. You'd think I would remember that, but we will have sari silk on sale. Oh, sashiko, sewing and sari silk. So we have some of our sashiko cloths, some of the threads, needles, the Hidamari needles. We've got a couple of the handy pocket guides.
Okay, a couple of questions.
Okay.
Sandy, this information is on Facebook, so you can create an account with Comments Sold by going to Facebook, and there's a post ad that I think is tagged at the top of Facebook about how to create your Comments Sold account.
I don't know that it's tagged now, but it could be tagged
when Chris finishes. Okay, and Suzanne, her jacket, you purchased your jacket at
Japanesque in Bethany. Isn't that awesome?
Yes. It's always part fashion show when we do these. Okay.
So the other one, there's a notions one, so we've got some great notions on sale. And then the third one is stencils and stamps. And some found objects and found papers as well. So 4 different categories. So what we've selected is some things in the shop, some last minute gift ideas. And we're doing it this Sunday because we believe that if you buy on Sunday and you have to buy within the time period, if you put things in your basket, you need to buy them, is we can get them shipped out in time to arrive prior to Christmas. A good reminder is these are going to be 20% off, but we also have free U.S. shipping for orders over $50. And while you're in shopping on the sale, You can also shop any of the items that we've had on our Facebook Live sales, the previous 2 ones. So there are some fabric bundles, there are some canthas shawls and quilts left. There are some of the caftans, there's a few bags left. So things from our previous sales are on there. They will not be part of this supply sale Sunday, but you can order them at the same time.
All right, how about telling them about the bead sale?
Ooh. So, in addition, we're doing, because we never slow down here, Judy doesn't let us, on Thursday evening, also it's another comment sold sale. It'll be a Facebook Live, and Judy will have lots of African beads. I think we had one of our very first Facebook Live sales was some African beads. As you know, a very good friend retired last year, and she had a bead store. And Judy has taken a lot of her inventory, bought some of the inventory, and now they're items that are really hard to put up on the website because they're one-off items. So we're getting pictures taken of those, and those will be our Thursday, December 16th at 7 p.m. Some beautiful, beautiful African beads.
And we're scouring our African fabric, so we're going to give you a touch of fabric too. So,
any questions?
Nope, they're all saying thank you. They're all ready to go make bags.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I was whipping them out. And they were like laughing at me. Are you really sure it's 15 minutes? I'm like, it's 15 minutes. I'm timing it. I'm having fun.
All right.
Thanks.